So at first, pretty neutral, tail's level with you. Then we see the neighbor, tail goes stiff and down. That right paw lifts, so this is some confliction, uncertainty, and that quickly tips over into a reaction. And so the reaction itself, although he's lunging forward, we have some bracing on the front paws. We've got a lowered rear end, and we're actually kind of pushing backwards even though we are moving into the end of the leash. The bark itself is rather low in tone. Typically when the dog is access seeking, we're going to see more loose, wiggly body language. We're going to see more elevation. They're sometimes bouncing around. They're moving side to side. The bark itself is higher in pitch. It can be more repetitive, sometimes more occasional, and usually there's some whining either before or during the reaction itself. This very low bark, ears back, is not indicating that it is access seeking. This looks fearful. This looks like a distance increasing bark. This is, hey, get away from me. Now, because he has a history of punishment, it's possible that the bark is cut short by, kind of realizing punishment may be imminent. Instead, redirects back towards you. And so that can mask his comfort level because the reaction itself comes out at a later point when he's really overwhelmed, masking some of the anxiety he feels at a lower level. And so we see some intermittent barking kind of oscillates between really uncomfortable coming back. Now, at this point, he tries something to advocate for himself, which I'm really impressed by, and it's okay that you missed it. It would be normal to, but he starts to cut in front of you and actually come around and face the opposite direction. So he's facing away from the trigger. This is a desire to move away from the trigger. This is him saying, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go this direction instead. So he's trying to use his body to show, I'd like to go this way. His options are very limited. And when he does this, we see a little bit of relief. We see that tail start to move a little bit. It's not as frozen. It's lifting up a bit. His ears are coming forward. His body's elevating a bit. He's still stressed, don't get me wrong, but it is getting relieved a little bit by moving just a bit away from the trigger and facing away from it. Now, this would be a good moment to turn and go the opposite direction along with him in the future. When we see this behavior, it's, I don't want to go this way anymore. Cool, let's go the other way then. That's fine. As long as we have the ability to do so. Now, this didn't work for him. Understandably, it's very easy to miss. It looks like instead, I've just missed the trigger, I'm ready to work. So he looks like he's come back into things. And so we start to kind of get him back where we want him to go and focus back on our goal. Unfortunately, our goal conflicts with his goal. And so we're going to see some conflict from that. As he gets back into position, eats the treat. When he's done eating, he looks around. He looks originally to where the other neighbor was, and then he looks over at the person holding the camera. When he does that, he shifts his weight. This is a little bit of a suspicious posturing. Got ears back, very tensed, a lot of tension throughout the brow, throughout the mouth. And so this is anxious. And then that leads very quickly again into another one of those reactions. Same thing, this is distance increasing. We're moving backwards while barking. We've got very low tail wags. We've got ears back. We're bracing into those front legs. This is get away from me. I don't like this. And because his option to leave, he tried it, it didn't work. His options are very limited. His other options now that he has to explore is to get the trigger to go away. That's pretty much it. And so given that, we're going to see some contrast. And the contrast is you can look around at the environment, which is uncomfortable for him right now because nothing's changing. The thing that's stressing him out is not leaving, or to focus on you. And when he focuses on you, that is the better of the two options. So we're going to see some better body language from that. We might see some relief. And so we're going to see those ears coming up. We're going to see him more interested in focusing on you. We're going to see a lot of engagement because it's preventing him from looking at the environment and having to engage that. Another thing that he does here, he kind of backs up and into the sit, so getting away isn't working. So he looks at you, gives some nice up ears, and it can be easy to think that this is now him kind of ready to move in that direction. Gives a big shake off. So there's a lot of tension building he's trying to release here. We have to ask where that tension's coming from. Lifted paw, so we're just uncertain. And now we start to move this way, and as he moves this way, he's looking at the trigger, ears go back, head lowers, let out a bark, look back at you, he elevates a bit. So again, we can't get off this ride. We're moving in that direction. He's kind of making the best of it. Here you do a circle. This gives us some information about how he's feeling about moving the other direction. First of all, we see him kind of elevate. We see that tail really loosen up coming around the circle. And so moving in that direction, we're getting feedback from his body that that is more desirable. He comes back around to face the trigger, finishes eating the food, and it's almost like he's surprised, like, oh, I thought I turned around. There you are. And we immediately snap into another barking reaction. There it is. Ears are back. We're tensed. We're stressed. And so we're like, okay, even turning around didn't really get me away from this thing. So that didn't really help to empower him in that moment, because he's still on this track of getting closer. So every time he looks at the trigger, we've got that lower tail, we've got those ears back, we've got the tension throughout the face, and we're getting less barking, but that is still present. The sitting that he's doing at this point, the sitting and looking at the trigger before barking, can be a way of stopping that forward momentum, because he tried turning around, that didn't work. He doesn't want to continue forward, that's evident. So sometimes planting in a stationary position can be another way to provide input of, I really am not sure, I don't want to move, or I don't know how to escape this. And so here it looks, like he's working, he's offering behaviors, but I think what he's doing is stopping us from continuing to move forward. Even though if you did go to move forward, we know that he would follow because that's a safe option for him. So it's hard because his options for advocation are very easily overruled as well. And so we're seeing some more reaction. That one, the way that he kind of got low to the ground, was pushing off of his legs and while barking up towards the sky, for me was, by reacting isn't working, you're not backing away. So this is just turning into outletting. I'm very overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with this energy, so I'm just yelling it out there. And then again, looking at you is easier and feels better than focusing on the environment. So we're going to see more of that. Again, moving forward, that tail is down, those ears are back. Looking up at you, we see some contrasting body language. And here he is kind of trying. He's not giving us a straight heel. He's not heading for the trigger. He is curving his body for an indirect approach, which does a couple things. First of all, dogs don't usually approach directly head on because it's super rude and it can cause conflict. And so he may be sort of inadvertently using some calming signals by kind of gently turning his body away as they approach. It could also be an attempt to guide your body on a less direct approach too. It's not quite working, but we see him try it here, which is good. So yep, there he is. He's kind of curving in, and did get him turned around, so that was good. And we see again that elevation of the tail and bounciness, and then he comes back forward, and we lose that as soon as he gets disconnected from the treats. So here we get that elevation. We're good with the treats. We like those. Those are making him happy. As soon as it's gone, now we're pulling forward. So as we reached this point, there were a lot of moments where he tried some communication and it didn't work. And so he has sort of confirmed for himself that there's no control. So frustration is building because he can't change anything. He's tried to change stuff. It's not working. So we're getting a lot of arousal, a lot of frustration. At a certain point, some dogs, especially anxious dogs, it seems that they start to realize that the only way out is through, and they start to rush towards the trigger. And when they're doing that, they're doing everything in their power to make it as conflict-free as possible. They come in with a lot of appeasement. They're trying to come in non-threatening, even though they tried to threaten to get them to go away a minute ago. That didn't work. They're changing their strategy. And they're trying to rush closer because all of this anticipation of moving closer slowly is going to extend the discomfort as opposed to just getting it over with. And so I think we're seeing that here, and especially because he's a dog that finds pressure on the leash aversive, knows that, getting ahead of you and pulling has a high risk of punishment in the past, not necessarily with you. This is a risk that he's taking, and it tells us that his motivation to get over it, to get through it, is higher than the risk of potential punishment, which is letting us know it's quite aversive for him. And so here we're seeing that rushing behavior. And the reason we know it's rushing behavior and not friendliness is how low the tail is. Those ears are still back. He's turning his head away from the trigger as he approaches. These are all calming signals. He's almost kind of crawl, bouncing, running in. He's making his body as low and small as possible. When we think about how young puppies approach older dogs when they're first meeting them for the first time, and they kind of come in all wiggly and low and weird and licking their face, and they lean into them. That's a lot of what he's doing. He's saying, look, I'm not threatening. I'm not here to hurt you. He's doing all of those same appeasement behaviors, but he's doing them on leash. So they're harder to see. So again, tail's very low, body's very low. We see a lot of tension through the nose, through the lips, ears are down. And then as we slow him down, we redirect him again. Now we're seeing just a lot of that stress stick around. He licks his lips, he's looking back, ears are down, tail is down, raised paw. Looking at you, we're not seeing the ears come up quite as much because he's getting closer to the trigger. He's really stressed out right now. And so getting closer at the end of the way is helping him rush through it a little bit here. But we're not seeing him obviously make any choices about it. Now, as he does get closer, when he stops eating the food, here we go again, getting really low to the ground. We're going to put those ears down. We've got this tension through the brow that we can see. He's making his eyes very soft. He's kind of squinting them. That tail is very low. His spine is arched. He's coming in really appeasing and really fast. And when he comes in, he's probably going to sniff low, sniff all around, gather some information. This is a threat assessment. Sometimes, actually kind of often, it's a weird thing that they do, that sometimes when they get closer, they also lean into them, which is again appeasement behavior. It's not necessarily soliciting any sort of petting or anything like that. And it seems like it is because they're making contact, but it's not always what it is. We see that very low, fast tail wag there. Again, that is not a happy tail wag. Those ears are back. Here we go, kind of curving in. And as soon as the interaction ends, we get a long shake off. And so this was a very tense interaction for him, and he tolerated it, but he did not enjoy it. Now, when we're looking at dogs that want to access the trigger because they want to engage with the trigger, there are some differences in when they actually get to the trigger. The first is they come in very loose and bouncy. They may still do some of these appeasement behaviors, but very quickly they will move into soliciting behaviors that are meant to extend the interaction. They're trying to get more petting. They're trying to get more attention. They're looking into the eyes of the person or the dog. They keep closing the distance. They're getting closer. They're actively engaging with them. They're flirting a little bit. They're trying to play. There are ways in which it's very evident that they're trying to prolong the interaction. So for him, it was tolerating the interaction, and as soon as he got away, he shook it off, was happy to move away. And then in these future repetitions as well, we're seeing that avoidance continue. And we're seeing, again, as he closes the distance and he gets near to the person, he's determined that it's not actively threatening, but it's still not something that he wants. So even though he's stopped reacting to it outwardly, we can see that interaction with this person is just, it's not it for him. He doesn't want it. So again, looking up at you, we feel good about that. We've got high ears. We've got a fine tail. It's loose, it's moving. But anytime we look forward at the person, we get those ears back. There we go, ears back, lowered head, stiffening through the jaw a little bit. And he's approaching very slowly now. So in this approach now, he's almost hesitating a bit. He's really letting you lead the way. His feet, as you get closer, are going to fall a little behind your legs here. He's hesitant about moving forwards. And now as he comes closer, we're going to start to see the whites of his eyes are growing. Those ears are coming down quite a bit. And so he starts to get very tense. There's the white of the eyes. He's looking up at you. He looks at them. We're not sure. There we go, looking up at you again. Whites of the eyes are showing. We're seeing more tail movement here, but I think that is more relief than excitement about the interaction. Whites of the eyes, closing the jaw a little bit. We're getting tensed. We look at the person, those ears go back. We're seeing some wrinkling around the mouth here. So this is a bit of a stress smile. Very wide whites. And he's very close to the person right now, but he's choosing to look up at you instead of looking at them. He's actively avoiding looking at them. And again, when we call him away from this, he gets closer and he starts to move away. Look at how his body changes. He speeds up. He's moving more quickly. That tail is starting to come up more and elevate while wagging. He's getting bounciness in his steps, some liveliness. So that's some more excitement. It's letting us know relief is coming from that direction. And again, this time as he comes around, he eats his treat as soon as he notices the person, and he's on a direct approach to them, and he's coming in a little bit faster now. We see almost increased stress signs. So here he eats the treat, he notices them, his head comes down, his ears go back, he licks his lips, head goes way down, tail goes way down, and we get really low and we're going right into those appeasement behaviors again. We turn away, we lick our lips. And so these are all, got that paw lift down there. This is all, okay, I'm here, but I don't really like this, but I'm trying to tolerate it so you don't do anything scary to me. We get a lot of whites of the eyes as he's turning away. And so he's willing to come closer, but those ears are back. He's very suspicious in the rear end here. He's kind of planting, keeping it lowered tail, raised paw. So this is kind of bracing for the interaction, turns away at the earliest possible point after sniffing. These are all those appeasement signals. So leaning into it doesn't necessarily mean wanting it. And I know that seems very conflicting here. And so here he tries a couple more times this attempt to indicate direction. So he does actually have some persistence, but we just need to be more aware of what it looks like. So for him right here, we are aiming forward. He's aiming this way. He's like, let's not walk to that person. Let's go this way. If we have to move forward, if we can't go back by those trees or go back behind that building, let's try negotiating. Let's go to this side of them so we don't head straight for them. So he's giving us some insights. And he's looking at you. He's giving you great eye contact. So this is communication he's trying right now. And then we go to walk forward, and he kind of stays in front of us a little bit here, but obviously doesn't want to be on a collision course. So then he kind of aligns himself, looks at the person, ears go back. He's like, okay, well, that didn't work. And so now we're working again. We're on the path. We're doing it. We're just focusing on staying by you. So now we're shaking it off. And I think that was a result of, I tried this, it didn't work. So, okay, I'm going to shake it off. Here we go. We're still going forward a bit. Tensing up in the mouth, ears are coming down some more. So we had an open mouth, now we've got a closed mouth. The mouth is opening again, but it's a little bit tensed. We see him kind of opening and closing his jaw a little bit. Here he's hesitating, so he's slowing down. He's letting you kind of just lead the way. He's not moving ahead of you as much. He's not eagerly trying to close the distance to the person. He's trying really hard not to look at them. Again, we're seeing the whites of the eyes just barely. He looks at them. He thinks about barking a little bit there. We see a little movement through his cheeks, looks back up at you. And so there's a lot of tension through his brow as he got closer there. I think he's getting to a point where he realizes he can kind of avoid the interaction, and he's not reacting to it, but he doesn't like it. And if it were his choice, I don't think he'd be going towards the person. So same thing here, going forward. He's doing pretty well. He tries another method as he gets closer of avoidance. So here again, he looks at the person, ears are back, head is down. Here again, he starts to veer his path. So before he started very much in line with you, you guys are parallel. Then as you see his rear end swing out this way, it's because his front end is aiming this way. So again, he's kind of suggesting, let's not head straight towards them this time. Okay, so here we see it. He's cutting in, but he doesn't do it enough to make a difference. And so it kind of worked. You veered, maybe 6 inches off the path you were. He looks forward. He's like, okay, we're still heading towards them. Ears are back. Looks at you again, slowing down, because that didn't work. So maybe we can slow it down. Okay, that's not really working. Looks at them. Ears are back. Eyes are squinty. He's trying some calming signals. Again, looks at them, ears are back, eyes are squinty. Now he's trying something new. So now he tries a look away. And this is a very distinct version of a calming signal because he's keeping his eyes on them, but he's turning his head away. So this is a suspicion move. This is like, I really don't want to interact with you. Do you see I'm doing something else? I'm busy. I'm looking over here. Don't bother me. So he's looking out of the corners of his eyes. Okay, they're still looking. That didn't work. Look back up. Ears are really coming back now. So, you did a wonderful job. It is really hard to see these signals, and the whole premise of the program is going to be about building up our awareness of his signals by creating a language that's more obvious to us, where we can start to respond to those things far before the reaction happens and start to negotiate mutually beneficial outcomes.